They scheduled a 300-person summer festival on my land without ever asking me. And the craziest part wasn't even the event. It was how confident they were that I wouldn't do anything about it. Like ownership was just a technicality they could work around if they filled out enough paperwork. I remember the exact moment I realized something was off. It was early April. One of those quiet mornings where the air still feels a little cold, but the grass is starting to come back. And I was walking my fence line like I always do, checking posts, checking wire, making sure nothing's loose. That routine's been part of my life for over a decade, ever since I bought that land just outside of a small town in northern Colorado. Back then, it wasn't much: dry pasture, broken fencing, the kind of place most people would drive past without even noticing. But I saw something in it. I put the work in, turned it into a fully operational cattle ranch, registered Black Angus, about 100 head on average, sometimes more depending on the season. Everything documented, everything inspected, everything exactly the way it's supposed to be. That land isn't just property to me. It's routine, it's structure, it's something I built with my own hands over years of showing up every day whether I felt like it or not. And that's why when I saw those survey stakes driven right into the middle of my pasture, not near the fence, not even close to the boundary, I'm talking deep inside my land, I just stopped walking, stood there for a second like my brain needed to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Then I saw the notice, laminated, zip-tied to my gate like it belonged there. I pulled it off, started reading. And about halfway through, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it didn't even register as real at first. Apparently, the neighborhood development on the other side of my west fence, nice houses, trimmed lawns, the kind of place where everything looks controlled and planned, had scheduled a full-scale community festival, food trucks, live music, vendor tents, the whole deal. And they had it approved. On my land. Now the person behind all this, let's call her Linda Carver. She was the HOA president over there. And I'd met her before, twice, actually. First time she came by, she had that polite, almost rehearsed tone, stood at my gate with a clipboard, smiling like she was selling something. "Hi there," she said. "We're organizing a neighborhood picnic, something small, just to bring the community together. We were hoping to use your front meadow for the afternoon." I remember leaning on the fence, just listening, letting her finish. Then I told her, simple and clear. No, not aggressive, not rude, just direct. I explained it was agricultural land, that I run livestock, that I don't have the insurance or the setup for public events, and honestly, I didn't want people wandering around a working ranch. It's not safe, and it's not what the land is for. She nodded, smiled a little tighter, thanked me for my time, and left. Second time she came back, maybe a couple weeks later, same request, but the tone was different, less friendly, more entitled, like she thought the answer should have changed by then. "You know, it would really benefit the neighborhood," she said. "It's just a few hours. We'd handle everything." And I told her no again. Same reasons, same answer. That time, she didn't smile when she left, just kind of gave me this look like she was filing something away in her head. And I didn't think much of it after that, figured that was the end of it. Turns out, it wasn't even the beginning. Because what she did next, she didn't come back to ask. She went around me. See, buried somewhere in county regulations, there's this little clause that allows registered community organizations to apply for temporary use of adjacent land, as long as certain conditions are met. And one of those conditions is that the landowner qualifies as a municipal stakeholder. And apparently, because my property taxes go to the same district as their subdivision, that was enough. So she filed the paperwork, framed my pasture as open, undeveloped land, and the county approved it. 300 people, scheduled for the second Saturday in June. No call, no warning, no conversation, just a notice on my gate telling me what was going to happen on land I've owned for over 10 years. I stood there for a long time after reading it, not angry, not yet, just thinking. Because there's a moment in situations like this where you realize something important. You can react, or you can respond. And those two things are not the same. So instead of calling Linda, instead of driving down to the HOA office or storming into the county building, I went back inside, sat down at my kitchen table, and started looking at my calendar. The same calendar I've followed every single year, without exception. And right there was the answer. That calendar. It's nothing fancy, Just a worn-out sheet of paper pinned to a beam in my barn, edges curled, ink faded from years of dust and sunlight. But every line on it means something. Every date is tied to how the land breathes, how the grass recovers, how the herd moves, and right there, circled like it had been every year since 2014. June 1 SD. Move full herd to the east pasture. Now here's the part that made me pause, because I could have changed it. I mean, technically, nothing was stopping me. I could have delayed the rotation, kept the pasture empty, avoided the conflict entirely, and I won't lie, that thought crossed my mind for a minute. Just keep things quiet. Let them have their little event. Avoid the headache. But then I thought about it a little deeper. Because this wasn't really about a festival anymore. This was about someone deciding they didn't need my permission. And if I moved that herd, even once, even just to keep the peace, I'd be confirming exactly what she already believed, that my land was flexible, negotiable, available if she pushed hard enough. And that didn't sit right with me. So I didn't change a thing. I kept going exactly the way I always have. But I also knew something else. If I was going to let this play out, I needed to be careful, not emotional, not reactive, precise. So I made one phone call, just one, to the county permit office. Guy on the line sounded half asleep, probably used to dealing with noise complaints and paperwork errors. I gave him the permit number and asked a simple question. Does the approved event include any livestock restrictions? There was a pause, keyboard clicking, paper shifting. Then he goes, "No, sir. The property is listed as open undeveloped land. There's no mention of livestock in the permit conditions." I leaned back in my chair a little when he said that, not smiling, not celebrating, just understanding. Because from a legal perspective, that one detail, that omission, mattered more than anything else in that entire situation. They hadn't accounted for reality. And that's where things tend to fall apart. So I took it one step further, not out of spite, not to build a case, just to make sure everything on my end was exactly where it needed to be. I filed a standard livestock notice with the county agricultural office. Nothing unusual, just documenting the herd size, location, and confirming compliance with state safety regulations. That's something I've done before. Anytime there's a seasonal shift or change in grazing zones, it's routine. But this time, I made sure every detail was clean, every box checked, every date lined up. Because if this was going to come down to interpretation, I wanted the facts to speak for themselves. June 1st came around. Early morning, same as always, sky just starting to lighten. That quiet stillness before everything wakes up. I walked out to the gate, coffee in one hand, and just stood there for a second, looking out at the pasture. Empty, quiet. Not for long. I opened the gate and started moving the herd. Now, if you've never worked cattle before, it's hard to explain, but there's a rhythm to it, a flow. You don't force it, you guide it. They move as a group, slow at first, then steady. One by one, they came through cows, calves, a couple of heavier bulls hanging back like they always do, and within an hour or so, the entire pasture was alive. Grass bending under their weight, low sounds carrying through the air, movement everywhere. And just like that, the event space was gone, because it was never an event space to begin with. It was a working pasture, and now it looked like one. A few days later, I noticed something interesting. Trucks started showing up, not many at first, just a couple of guys on, loading equipment near the edge of the field. Tent poles, folding tables, stacks of chairs. They didn't come all the way in, not yet, probably waiting for final clearance or inspection. I watched from a distance, didn't say anything, didn't approach. Because again, I wasn't stopping them. I was just letting things be exactly what they were. Then came the inspection. County vehicle pulled up mid-morning. White truck, official seal on the door. Guy steps out with a clipboard, takes a look around like he's expecting a clean, empty field ready for setup. Instead, he sees cattle everywhere. And I mean everywhere. One of the bulls had parked himself right near where they'd marked out a stage area, just standing there, calm as anything, like he owned the place, which, again, he kind of did. There were cows grazing between stacks of equipment, calves weaving around metal stakes like they were part of the landscape. And off to one side, a group of maybe 20 just lying down, chewing, resting, completely unbothered by any of it. The inspector didn't say anything at first, just stood there, taking it all in. Then he started walking, slow, deliberate, checking distances, looking at how the herd was spread out, flipping through his codebook every couple minutes. I stayed back, leaned against the fence, arms crossed, just watching. Not interfering, not guiding. Because this wasn't my call to make. This was his. And about 20 minutes in, I could see it on his face. That moment when everything clicks. When the paperwork in his hand doesn't match what's in front of him. He made a call, then another, wrote something down, nodded to himself. And that was it. That same afternoon, the permit got suspended. Not because I complained, not because I filed anything against them, but because the situation, as it actually existed, didn't meet the requirements they themselves had approved. And once that happened, everything started falling apart. Slow at first, then all at once. By the next morning, you could feel it before you even saw it. That shift in energy when something carefully planned starts unraveling. Trucks that were supposed to be arriving didn't, calls were being made, equipment was being reconsidered, and out there in the middle of it all, my herd was just living like none of it had anything to do with them. I was out by the barn when the first real sign hit. A rental truck pulled up near the fence. Two guys stepped out, took one look at the pasture, and just stood there. No rush, no unloading, just confusion. One of them actually laughed under his breath and said, "Yeah, no way," before they got back in the truck and drove off. That's when I knew it was done. Not officially, not on paper yet, but practically it was over. A couple hours later, another crew showed up, this time for the stage setup. They walked a little closer, trying to assess if maybe, just maybe, they could work around it. And that's when one of the bulls shifted. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic, just took a few slow steps in their direction. That was enough. They didn't argue, didn't negotiate, they just turned around and left. Because no one wants to be the guy explaining to his boss why he tried to build a stage in the middle of a cattle herd. By early afternoon, the calls started coming in. I didn't hear them, not directly, but I saw the missed calls later, same number, over and over. Linda. Now I'll give her this, she didn't show up in person, and I think that tells you everything you need to know. Because up until that point, everything she did was calculated, controlled, handled through paperwork and distance. But now, this wasn't a form she could file. This was real. And real doesn't always give you options. I didn't call her back. Not because I was trying to be difficult, but because there was nothing left to say. The situation had already answered itself. Later that evening, I got confirmation from the county, short, formal notice, permit suspended due to non-compliance with livestock safety regulations. That was it. No drama. No accusation, no mention of me. Just a system correcting itself. And over the next day or two, everything disappeared. The equipment that had been dropped off got picked up. The stakes came out of the ground. The field went back to exactly what it had always been. A pasture. And the cows, they didn't remember any of it. They kept grazing, moving, resting, completely unaware that they had just shut down a 300-person event without doing a single thing differently. And I think that's the part that stuck with me the most. Because people always expect some kind of big moment, confrontation, yelling, some dramatic final scene where everything gets settled face to face. But that's not how this ended. There was no apology, no conversation, no closure in the way people usually imagine. Just silence. A few weeks later, I saw Linda once at a distance across the road near the edge of their subdivision. She looked over, recognized me, and for a second it felt like maybe she was going to walk over, say something. But she didn't. She just turned and kept walking. And honestly, that said more than anything she could have said out loud. Because at the end of the day, this was never really about a festival. It was about control. About someone believing they could bypass a boundary if they approached it the right way. And what happened wasn't me stopping her. It was reality, refusing to bend. So here's what I'll leave you with. If you were in that position, would you have handled it the same way? Or would you have stepped in earlier, changed the outcome before it ever got that far? Because situations like this, they're not always this clean. And sometimes, doing nothing takes more control than doing something.